Welcome to the LEC podcast, a show about growing in connection with the earth and communities around us. Brought to you by the Living Earth Center in Mankato, Minnesota. I am your host and producer, Jacob Bases. Let's get growing. All right, it is update time. We still have plots available up at the community garden. If anyone is interested in reserving a space, you can get on the Living Earth Center website. Applications open through the 15th of March. This week's episode is SkyAnne Walker. We'll be talking to her about her role as the community farm manager. If you're interested in getting involved at the community farm, we have volunteer opportunities available out there. You can also get involved with that through the portal on our webpage, livingearthcentermn.org. Without any further ado, here is our interview with SkyAnne Walker. Welcome, SkyAnne. If you could please just introduce yourself to the audience and let them know a little bit about who you are.
Yes, my name is SkyAnne Walker. I am a small business owner. I own two businesses. Prairie Willow is an artistic outlet that I have. I make dream catchers and I do beadwork. And Wiman Homestead is my way of creating a closer connection to the earth. My husband and I grow produce in our backyard and we sell that produce, and we also process the food, and we try to promote food sovereignty. I'm also a microbiologist at the hospital in town, and I'm very active in the community for equity, inclusion, and diversity efforts.
That is awesome. Can you maybe give a little bit of an example or something about how you came to what is connecting the microbiology and the Wiman how is that pronounced?
Wiman Homestead.
Wiman Homestead. Like what connects those two things? Was it a natural exposition, or?
I think that biology is a general interest of mine, and that includes microbiology, which is working with bacteria and viruses, but also working with the earth around you. Biology is all about understanding the world that surrounds you.
Sure. Yeah, listening to just that very brief introduction that you gave, it seems it seems very aligned with what our given mission statement here is at the Living Earth Center of trying to bring people into their into connection with the earth and the people around them. So you've taken the position as the community farm manager at the Living Earth Center here. How did you come to be in contact with the Living Earth Center, and what was it like to get involved?
So my networking for Wiman Homestead, I actually ended up at a few Region 9 meetings, and Laura was at a couple of those meetings, and at one of them she mentioned that they were hiring for a farm manager. And when I first heard that, I was like, oh, that sounds interesting, because my job at the hospital, I work in a basement in the middle of the building, and I don't even have windows, and I would really love to work outside a little bit too. But I also didn't jump on it right away because I know that I'm a very busy person, and the thought of having two jobs was a little bit overwhelming at that point. But when I showed up to the next meeting and she said she was still looking for a farm manager, my mind just shifted, and I decided, I think I want to learn some more about this. And so I reached out to her and we started talking, and here I am now.
Sure. And what was it that eventually made you decide to do it? You just wanted to get your fingers in the dirt more, or kind of like expand?
Yeah, I think it is about wellness for me. mental wellness, and being able to be outside and digging in the dirt and growing things is just a really happy place for me.
Sure. Can you elaborate on that at all? Like, is it something that historically has been or something that you envision to be?
Um, I think that when I am struggling mentally, I tend to go outdoors, and that's where I find my peace. And so that's just where I naturally go.
Cool. Yeah, because I was gonna say most people who are looking, most people don't look at it as like at a second job as like a path to happiness necessarily. I mean, certainly, I think I've fallen for it too. But the Living Earth has done very well by me in that regard, I would say.
Yeah.
So I think you might have made the right decision. What is it that you will be doing out at the Living Farm? We've never had a farm manager on this program before, so maybe talk a little bit about the job that you actually will have to do out there, what you'll be managing, and what your vision is for it. But if you could just start with, what it is you have to do on the day to day there.
Okay, so the community farm is separated into two sections. One section is similar to a community garden, and we have growers that they get a plot. And so my job with them will be to help them make sure they have all the resources that they need. And the Living Earth Center has also secured an economic opportunity grant. So if those growers choose to, they can sell the produce that they grow out at the farm for market value, and that produce is donated to our partners like the local food shelves. Which leads me into the other section of the farm, which is the Living Earth Center garden, where we will be growing produce specifically to be donated to places like local food shelves and other programs. And a part of that is also going to be managing volunteers for that, because I can't do all of that by myself.
Sure. About how large is the Living Earth Center, the community farm?
I looked it up the other day and it said it's an acre. I'm not very good at distance.
Sure. Yeah, and if you're driving by it ever, it's right on the way past Mount Cato, and I actually knew that number. It was a loaded question. It's an acre, but like I've never seen one of that unit of measurement, but knowing that that's the size of it, and you can see the whole thing fenced in to the left as you drive by, it's an interesting measurement for when you hear like someone's like, "Oh, we have 500 acres out here." Not quite understanding what that was something that I went through. What type of how much of that area is generally for people who are we using as the Living Earth Center, and what will we produce versus the people who are in the programs to grow food for themselves or to sell at market value?
Again, I'm not very good with distances, but after having been out there once in the fall, I haven't been out there yet again because, it's winter time right now.
Sure.
I would say it's pretty close to half and half.
Mhm.
Maybe, 1/3 and 2/3, but probably closer to half and half.
And what does the kind of like organizational or day-to-day stuff look like on that once you're like as you're ramping up, like what is the work of that management position like? I think that a lot of people might kind of have, not an idea of how we have a very much a kind of like a mega farming mentality. Like when you see a farm, like sometimes you're driving for like, 5 or 6 minutes before you even see the next farmhouse. What does kind of how does an ultra small farm operate?
Well, right now we're just in the planning phases, starting to talk about what we want to grow and figuring out what seeds we need, what seeds need to be started in the next couple months, and what will go directly into the ground. So right now it's just planning what's going to be planted. But as we get closer to the growing season, then it will shift more to getting volunteers to come out and help with those big projects, planting. We'll be setting up an irrigation system, those types of things.
Cool. What kind of you mentioned, doing gardening and growing your own food. Is this a big step up from the kind of real estate that you previously had, or is this just more of the same?
Yeah, so my house, my yard is, I believe, about a quarter of an acre, and my house sits on that. So the amount of space that is available with the community farm is much larger than what I'm used to. So that will be interesting to learn about that, how that's different.
Sure. Is that like a really exciting prospect, or is it kind of daunting? Awesome. Um, now, like let's talk a little bit about your experience with the earth in general. Has growing been a lifelong practice for you?
I wouldn't say lifelong, but we have been growing in our backyard for about 12 years now. So I'm not a brand new gardener, but definitely I still have a lot to learn, I feel
Yeah.
like.
And what are some of your favorite things to grow?
My favorite things to grow. I like tomatoes and cucumbers. We have been learning how to grow some unique tomatoes lately, some more of the heirloom varieties, and those have been really fun.
What's different about a tomato like that?
The color, the flavor, the shape.
Hmm. I've only through working here started to, come into the understanding of how different so many of these things can be. Like, I mean, even just being in the office and seeing all the different seed packets, or trying like cucamelons for the first time out at the farm last year. I did not know that such a food could be grown here. Or I was also a little bit blown away by like the sheer amount of food that comes out of a really small space. Because I mean, even though it is a big step up from where you currently were, it still is the kind of place you can walk from front to back in probably 45 seconds or something like that. And hearing that we pull out thousands of pounds of produce to deliver to these different partners, like it's kind of like the acre thing. Like, you drive by and you don't necessarily see that. Like, I never drove by that and thought like, oh, there's like 3,000 pounds of food in there. So it's something that I'm still trying to like wrap my head around as like I watch this happen. Um,
I think it's difficult to wrap your head around that unless you're actually in there doing it. Pulling that produce out of the garden, hauling it out with your hands. Um, it's really rewarding to start with a tiny little seed and to end up with baskets of food.
yeah. Um, and I think that that's kind of what draws people, in a big way to the Living Earth Center. Because most of the people who we deal with are people who are either working in our growers program, our emerging growers program, or who are just people who are gardeners of the community garden, which is different. If you're listening for the first time, we have a community farm that is kind of out by Mount Cato, and then our community garden has its own garden manager, and that's more of like a plot rental kind of thing. Um, but uh, the point of that was mostly to say that uh, kind of a segue into like, what do you feel like is your connection to the earth, or like what has you doing this thing? Because the other thing is certainly I mean, there's the supermarket. um I don't know whether or not it's more work to do one or the other. I haven't decided yet. I've only been paying attention for about 6 months now.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's more rewarding to grow your own food and to know what went into growing it, to know whether or not pesticides were used on it. Um, to me, there really isn't anything that's much better than a tomato that's still warm from the sun, straight out of the garden. That is the best flavor you can ever have, and you can't duplicate that any other way.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. It's always whenever someone offers me something from their garden, it was also one of the things that kind of had me jumping when I came here. Is there was I think one of the first times I was in the office here, there was a basket of vegetables out on the table, and I was wondering if there's always a basket of vegetables out there. But looking forward beyond like the day-to-day stuff, what is your vision for like are there any like changes or like what's your overall vision for what's going to happen out there in the next I mean I don't know the time frame necessarily for how long you'll be doing it, but what's your vision?
I think that there is a lot of opportunity for people to learn more about connecting to the earth. And I definitely plan on learning more from the growers out there and from the other volunteers. And I think that if anybody out there has an interest in learning more about it, come volunteer, come learn what it's like to grow your own food, and you can see that yes, it is work, but it's not difficult work.
Sure. And just briefly about volunteers, what do volunteers at the community farm generally do?
Pretty much just tending to the gardens. I hate the W word, but pulling weeds, I suppose, is part of it, and harvesting the produce and checking for pests. That's something that I'll definitely be learning more about. Um, I have been gardening for quite a while, but when we get pests in our garden, a lot of times we just lose the plant. But when you are trying to feed the community, you can't just let those plants go. So that's definitely going to be a learning process for me.
Sure. And I kind of want to go back to what you said about the W word. I'm guessing that comes from some kind of uh, I mean I've heard talk about like native pollinators around here and like the value of the plants that grow here naturally. What were you getting at there? What is important to you?
I think that before you just pull a plant out of the ground, you should think about why it's there. And you should also think about if you're going to pull it out, how can I use this? Because a lot of the things that people call weeds around here either are edible or they have medicinal properties that they can be used to benefit you.
Sure. Do you have some like examples off the top of your head of some of those types of plants that people generally think are weeds?
Purslane, have you ever heard of that?
No.
Purslane it looks kind of like a little succulent plant and it grows in gardens really well. It creates ground cover. It doesn't grow up very much, but that is edible. You can put it in salads. The only thing that you need to worry about with that is that it's kind of high in oxalic acid. So if you're prone to kidney stones, you don't want to eat that. But if you don't have issues with that, then you can eat right away.
Huh. Yeah, it's interesting because we've done one of the most like interesting things that's happened to me at the Living Earth Center is we had a native pollinator class with a master gardener here, and they had a bunch of people who just had gardens in their homes, and they went on at length about like all of the little solutions they had to deal with these things and trying to bring in more like insects and pollinators and like trying to find out exactly what they were like. And it they were talking a lot about things that I think a lot of people might believe to be weeds. What where does that come from? Is that like a manicured garden thing? Like I you know
Yeah, I think so. I think as humans, we feel like everything should have a place, and we want things to line up in rows and, stack up perfectly, but nature doesn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so definitely when you're pulling those weeds and lining up rows of plants, that's you fighting against nature.
Yeah. And I would also imagine that whatever that weed is if it has the capacity to grow there, it probably also tells you something about like the ground's ability to put something out, even if it isn't necessarily useful. I get frustrated every year because I live in a condo building and there's no love for dandelions amongst the committee.
Oh, those are so pretty though.
I agree. I love driving up the hill in the spring and seeing an explosion of yellow, but I'm the only one who sees it that way. Yeah, I and you could make all kinds of stuff from dandelions. I've heard all of the dandelion the dandelion preaching. Like it's mainstream now. Like dandelions are in. So hopefully we're probably just a few years away from full dandelion acceptance.
I hope so.
Are there any other favorite plants from the area that you have?
I think plantain is another favorite. It's definitely a good medicinal plant. You can use it to help with bug bites and to soothe rashes or itches and stuff like that. And it also is good for the soil because it helps to break apart very compacted soil.
When I hear plantain, I think of those little bananas. Like, is that,
No,
is
it's
that
different.
Yeah, I figured I was wrong, but like are those called plantains too?
Yeah, yes, they are.
What does the other plantain look like?
It's a very, it is very low to the ground. It fans out and it's got really kind of like round leaves like that, and they just kind of grow along the ground, but the roots are really deep, and those are what kind of break up the soil. And then when they flower, they shoot up little flower spikes.
That sounds really cool. I hope you can point one out to me sometime. Well, is there anything else that you kind of want to talk about when it comes to the farm? Anything that you think that maybe I missed about what's going to be going on there, at least in this upcoming year, or any like immediate calls to action for the next few months?
I definitely feel like food sovereignty is something that should be on everybody's mind. That's something that I want to promote through Living Earth Center. I want to get people out there to learn how to grow their own food so that they can use those things that they learn to turn around and grow food for themselves.
Yeah, I mean that is extremely that's an empowering thing, and it is also something that I don't think that a lot of folks realize that there's a lot of opportunities for. I mean, even if you're not doing something like at the community farm, there's plenty of community gardens where you could, I mean, just from what I've learned through doing this podcast, theoretically grow a lot of produce for your family on like an 8x8 plot or something like that.
Yep.
Well, thanks for joining us. And I'm really excited to see what the work that happens out at the community farm this year is. And hopefully we'll have lots of opportunities to come out there and take photos and videos of what's happening at the community farm.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. If you find yourself in alignment with our mission and values, the Living Earth Center is a 501c3 nonprofit. Consider donating. You can find more information at livingearthcentermn.org.